All right, we'll go ahead and start the August 2nd Des Moines Waterworks Planning Committee meeting. We'll have folks introduce themselves as they speak. First on the agenda is well rehabilitation, the basics. So I imagine this is going to be very helpful for me in understanding this topic as we talk about it in our board meeting. So I'll turn it to you, Ted, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Andrea. As you are aware, Des Moines Waterworks operates 8 radial collector wells, 6 at Maffett, the McMullen treatment plant, and 2 at Saylorville. Those wells need to be rehabilitated on a regular basis. And Vern Rash from our engineering department is going to share with us an informative presentation on the whys and hows of radial collector well rehab. So Vern, please.
Okay, thank you. Somebody can give me some feedback and make sure that I'm sharing the screen properly.
It's looking good.
Yep, see it.
Very good. Thank you, Ted, and good afternoon, everyone. Some of you in attendance today may recall that earlier this year, on April 5th, I made a presentation to the same board planning committee. During that presentation, I described the stormwater system improvements project at the Fluor Drive Operations Center. I recall mentioning at that April 5th meeting that I believe that you, the members of our board planning committee, would prefer to hear more about that stormwater improvements project than simply what the cost is, who was doing the work, what equipment was going to be provided, and when the project was going to be finished. While being better informed on these things is important for you as board members, I went on to say that I believe that being familiar with some of the background for that project may also be interesting and useful as well. Well, now here I am again to describe for you another contract that the Board of Waterworks Trustees recently entered into, the 2021 well rehabilitation contract. Over the course of my 46 plus years here at Des Moines Waterworks, I've been involved in a wide variety of projects. These projects have ranged from distribution system improvements, design and construction of feeder mains and storage facilities, design of various water treatment processes, and development of our raw water sources of supply. And it's in this area of raw water supply development projects that I've been involved in that I've been involved with 2 major undertakings. The first major undertaking that I was involved with was the design and construction of the Maffett Reservoir well field. This well field supplies the raw water for the McMullen water treatment plant and was constructed in the late 1990s. The second major undertaking that I've been involved with in the area of raw water supply development projects was the design and construction of the Saylorville well field. This well field supplies the raw water for the Saylorville water treatment plant, and that project began in 2002. From this brief description, I think you can see that in the case of raw water supply development at the Maffett Reservoir and Saylorville well fields, that the focus for the last 20 to 25 years has been on the development of well fields as a raw water source of supply. All one needs to do is look at the preliminary engineering report that was completed this past May by HDR Engineering Incorporated and Black & Veatch Incorporated for the Saylorville water treatment plant. We can see from the effort put into this report that the Des Moines Waterworks is continuing and, in fact, even increasing its reliance on the use of well fields as a raw water source of supply. And I can say this because of the major findings from this preliminary engineering report. One of those major findings was that the expansion to our raw water sources of supply must be completed by 2028 in order to meet projected water demands. And this includes expansions to the existing well fields as well. A second major finding from the 2022 preliminary engineering report was that expansions are also needed by 2028 to the Saylorville water treatment plant. The need to expand raw water sources of supply by 2028 will include further development of the existing Saylorville well field. This well field will need to be enlarged in order to convey the additional alluvial groundwater to the Saylorville water treatment plant. Now, I just used a new term here, alluvial groundwater. Now, let's remember this term because we will be defining it here very shortly. So where are we as we talk about this existing raw water collection system? Where is this existing well field that is located along the Des Moines River? To put it another way, where are we going to obtain the supply of additional alluvial groundwater for the Saylorville water treatment plant? Well, to answer that question of where are we, here's an aerial photograph of the study area that was included in the preliminary engineering report that I just mentioned. And I'd like to point out the limits of this particular study area here. To the north, we have Saylorville Dam with Saylorville Reservoir here. And along the west boundary of the study area basically is Lower Beaver Road that extends all the way down to Euclid Avenue. We cross the Des Moines River and then go up the east boundary that again basically runs along Northwest 6th Drive all the way back up to Saylorville Dam. And within this study area, we have, of course, our existing Saylorville water treatment plant that's located at the corner of Northwest 66th Avenue and Northwest 26th Street. And our well field, or raw water source of supply, consists of 2 radial collector wells, which is another new term that we'll be talking about here shortly. But these 2 wells, or radial collector wells, form the raw water collection system that collects the alluvial groundwater from this alluvial aquifer and brings it back to the Saylorville water treatment plant for treatment. As with any other component in our treatment or raw water collection system, proper maintenance of the facility is important. And in the case of our raw water collection system, maintenance of these facilities in the well field is absolutely critical to maximizing the production of the raw water or the alluvial groundwater from the well field. And that's why I would like to take some time today to inform you of the results of the maintenance efforts that have been performed on these 2 existing wells in the Saylorville well field. These maintenance efforts include those completed in 2017 and those completed this past spring in 2022, May of 2022, and will in fact continue this fall. Before we do that, we need to establish some definitions for some of the terms that are going to be essential for understanding just how crucial it is to have a regular maintenance program for the wells in the well field. And I mentioned alluvial aquifer earlier, and I promised I'd give a definition of that, and here it is. An alluvial aquifer is defined as a geologic formation generally comprised of unconsolidated materials. Now, when I say unconsolidated materials, think of going to your sandbox out in your backyard, picking up a handful of sand, and that sand flows out of your hands. That material is unconsolidated. It flows freely and it's not cemented into a solid rock mass. And that's what an alluvial aquifer is. It's comprised of these unconsolidated materials that include some clays and silts, but mainly sands and gravels that have been deposited by running water, typically occurring adjacent to rivers. In this visual right here, I've got a diagram of what an alluvial aquifer is. Again, a deposit of primarily sands and gravels that have been deposited over geologic time, and that's thousands and thousands of years, by running water, and it's got a river running next to it. Now, if we use our critical thinking skills, we can take this definition of alluvial aquifer and extend it to alluvial groundwater. And we can define alluvial groundwater as water that is stored and transmitted in a geologic formation, generally comprised of unconsolidated materials consisting of clay, silt, sand, and gravel that have been deposited by running water over thousands of years and are typically occurring adjacent to rivers. So this water that's in this river that's adjacent to the alluvial aquifer, it charges this alluvial aquifer with that river water, and now that water becomes alluvial groundwater. So there's 2 definitions we've added to our toolbox: alluvial aquifer and alluvial groundwater. Another term that we will be using today is one I just mentioned a short time ago, radial collector well. I think the best way to define a radial collector well is to explain its various parts. But to first, let's ask the question, what is a radial collector well? A radial collector well are well screens that extend radially and horizontally into an alluvial aquifer. We just defined an alluvial aquifer from a central shaft or caisson. So here's our well screens that extend horizontally or radial from a central caisson. And that's where we get the name radial collector well from, is that the well screens extend radially from the central caisson out into the alluvial aquifer, which again is a deposit of sands and gravels that are unconsolidated and have been deposited over geologic time by running water. And here's the river, and then the river charges this alluvial aquifer, and that water now becomes alluvial groundwater. These well screens are the single most critical component of the radial collector well. Again, this collects the water from the alluvial aquifer to the central caisson, and the central caisson then pumps the water from here to the final destination point, which is one of our water treatment plants, either the Saylorville water treatment plant or the McMullen water treatment plant. As I mentioned, well screens are probably the most critical component of the radial collector well. And I'd like to show you the different components of this well screen. A well screen it consists of an array of stainless steel rods with stainless steel wire wrapped around it. And the stainless steel wire has an opening in between each successive wrap of wire. So we've got an opening, or a slot size opening, that allows water from the alluvial aquifer to flow from the aquifer into the well screen. There are three important functions of this well screen. The first one is that it will permit water to enter the well from the saturated alluvial aquifer. The second important function of the well screen is that it prevents sand, gravel, and sediment from entering the well and adversely affecting the yield of the well. And then the third important function of this well screen is that the well screen structurally supports the aquifer material surrounding the well screen. And these well screens are exactly like the well screens that we have in all 8 of our radial collector wells. And remember what these look like, because we're going to be seeing videos, a short video clip of these a little bit later here in the presentation. I'm going to add one more new term to our toolbox of new terms, and that new term is riverbank filtration. Riverbank filtration is a process, and it's a process of collecting water from an alluvial aquifer. We've already defined what that is. That's located near the bank of a river to induce water to flow from the river through the riverbank and into the aquifer. So here we've got the components of our radial collector well, our central caisson here, our horizontal well screen, or radial well screen that radiates out from the central caisson. This well screen collects alluvial groundwater from the alluvial aquifer. And as the well screens collect that water, it induces flow from the river into the alluvial aquifer to replace the water that was taken out by the well screens. And you can imagine, as that water flows from the river through these sands and gravels, that you get the benefit of a natural filtration process. And that's where we get the word riverbank filtration. This natural filtration of alluvial groundwater that's collected by this radial collector well provides several benefits. These benefits make alluvial groundwater much more attractive as a raw water source than the lower water quality that we get from our surface water sources of supply, such as the Des Moines River and the Raccoon River. But what are those benefits? Well, we've got quite an inventory of benefits. The first one is that riverbank filtration removes microbial matter, such as protozoa, bacteria, and viruses. Riverbank filtration also removes algae that can clog our filters, shorten our filter runs, and adversely affect the turbidity of the filter effluent at our water treatment plants. Riverbank filtration also removes the algal toxin microcystin. Riverbank filtration reduces the turbidity of the raw water, which is a huge benefit to the treatment at our treatment plants. We also get partial removal of organic matter, including disinfection byproduct precursors. We get reduced nitrate concentrations with the use of riverbank filtration. We also have partial removal of some herbicides, pesticides, and pharmaceuticals, including personal care products, which are becoming an emerging contaminant now. And then finally, our last benefit is that we have warmer water temperatures, which is particularly important during the winter months, because this warmer water temperature, even a matter of just a few degrees, can significantly reduce the number of main breaks that we experience in our distribution system. Being able to maximize all these benefits of riverbank filtration, to be able to do that, we need to be able to maximize the amount of alluvial groundwater that we collect with our well fields. And what this means is frequent rehabilitation of the wells. We just awarded a contract here just a little over a year ago at the July 27th, 2021 board meeting to Lane Christensen Company. And that contract was to maintain, or the word we like to use, rehabilitate, the 2 radar collector wells, one at Saylorville well field and then one at Maffett Reservoir well field. And the contract cost of that contract that was awarded back about a year ago was a little over $1.3 million. The rehabilitation work was completed on one of the wells this past spring, well number 2 at Saylorville. And then the second one will be rehabilitated this fall. So how effective is this rehabilitation work on restoring the yield from our wells? I could try to describe that to you, and I will, but I'm going to rely on the assistance of a few short video clips to show the contrast between the before rehabilitation of the well and the after rehabilitation of the well. These video clips will primarily be of the well screens, since, as I mentioned earlier, the well screens are a very critical, if not the most critical component of the well. And that's really whether it's a vertical well or a radial collector well. This first video that we're going to see is from well 1 at Saylorville. And it's the pre-maintenance video clip from the central caisson. Remember, the central caisson is what collects the water from the individual well screens and collects it there, and it's pumped from there to their treatment plant. I'm going to run the video. It's a very short one. And if it's okay with our audience, I'm going to stop it a couple of times throughout just to explain and provide a little bit of commentary on what you're seeing.
Number 4 right now, and it's staying continuous. It's a light dusting against the wall where the wall meets the floor. It's actually getting lighter as I want to actually getting lighter as I work towards number 1. Yeah, I can almost see the concrete. Yeah. This is more into the center. You get a little bit solider chunks. What do you have over near the ladder? This is the ladder by number 1. What do you got right there? She said there was quite a bit more. Ladder by number 1. It's just it's just kind of chunky and piled up right in this small area. Okay, so that's the higher spot. That's the only real high spot, 3 or 4 inches maybe. Just a random pile right by the ladder for some reason.
Okay, what we're looking at here is one of the laterals, the well screens that extend out into the alluvial aquifer. This instrument right here that the contractor has is a meter that measures the flow of water coming out of this lateral and out of this well screen. So there's going to be a short video clip of 2 or 3 of the laterals. I can't remember how many, but you'll notice that the rate of flow out of these one of these laterals is a lot more than what this one is, and there's one that's going to be quite a bit less. And you can tell that by how fast this meter is spinning.
Your pipe out of there. I'm leaving it. This is the 500 that goes to it. What? That's the 5-foot section that goes to the camera, so I can hold it better. Oh. This is number 6? Yeah, go ahead, move to 5. Oh, roger that. Number 5.
Now you notice we got quite a bit more buildup on the inside of this particular lateral here. A lot of that is microbial deposits that are on the well screen, but also some manganese and iron deposits as well. And you'll notice that the speed of this meter is going to be different than what it was at that last.
Four. Camera left a little bit. Left, 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 left. Continue with the inspection. This is lateral 8.
Okay. We've got a 3-step process that we used on this rehabilitation. You can see that we've got quite a bit of buildup on the inside of this well screen, a lot different and a lot heavier than the pictures of the new well screens that we saw earlier. We've got a 3-step process that we have for rehabilitation. I've got a slide here that shows what those are.
Continue with the inspection. This is lateral A2, approximately 200.
We'll go ahead and see the video first. I think it's the second slide that I've got here that tells what the actual process is. So again, I might stop this throughout just to point out a couple things for you.
20 feet in length. Camera has been inserted. Go ahead, diver.
Roger. All right, and feet going in?
This is the first section plus the first 10 foot.
Yes, that is affirmative, the first 10 foot.
Roger, keep on going.
Roger.
I'm going to stop it just here for just a moment, just point out here's those rods that are on the inside of the well screen, just to point those out for you. And again, that'll give you a little bit of an idea of the amount of buildup and the amount of deposits that we've got inside this well screen. Again, before we rehabilitate the well, this is what the well screens look like before.
All right, I'll stop right there. We're at the end.
Roger.
Okay, here's the 3-step rehabilitation process I mentioned earlier. First step consists of a 3,500 PSI, pounds per square inch, rotating water jet that advances the entire length of the well screen at a rate of 25 feet per hour. Now, just to put that in context, if we were in the boardroom watching this video, the length of the boardroom is about 25 feet. So that means this water jet would take 1 hour to advance just the length of the boardroom. That's the rate that this first step would be. And the purpose of this jet is to dislodge the sand, scale, precipitates, and biological deposits that we saw in that video from the well screen, from between the well screen openings. And actually that jet is powerful enough that it gets actually into the aquifer materials that surround the well screen as well. The second step in the rehabilitation process is a chemical treatment. We added chemical to the well screen, and that helps keep the material that's dislodged from the well screen, helps keep it suspended so it's more easily removed from the well screen as we get further on in the development, or excuse me, the rehabilitation process. And then the third step is repeating that same 3,500 PSI rotating water jet. The only difference is now we're advancing it the entire length of the well screen at 10 feet per hour. So instead of taking 1 hour to traverse the length of the boardroom, it would take 2.5 hours to traverse the length of the boardroom. So it's a lot slower rate. So after we do that, then we run a video of the rehabilitated well screen just to see what kind of improvement we got. So this video that we're going to see now is the same lateral that we saw just a minute ago that had all those deposits in it. This is that same lateral after the rehabilitation process.
Date is January 17th, 2018. This is Des Moines, Iowa, collector 101. We're going to be doing lateral A2. Should be 220 feet long. $215, then a little bit to the end there, 220. Again, this is lateral, I'll stop this lateral A2, 220 feet, everything looked really clean.
So the question now is, were we successful? I think the video shows provides some evidence that we were successful. But the numbers that we experienced show that we experienced some success as well. In 2017, after we rehabilitated well number 1 at Cedarville, we had a 100% increase in capacity. In other words, we doubled the capacity of the well from what it was before rehabilitation to what it was afterwards. In 2017, well 2, that well had a 71% increase in capacity, almost a twofold increase in capacity between what we had before the rehabilitation process and then afterwards. Most recently, here in 2022, we also rehabilitated well 2 at Cedarville again. And this time we had a 120% increase in capacity. And that 120% increase in capacity brought us to what the capacity was in 2017. I'm going to put a flow rate number on that just to help put it in perspective a little bit. After rehabilitation at well 2 here this past spring in 2022, we had 3,000 gallons per minute of yield from that well. And we still had 8 feet of water remaining above the minimum level in the well, which tells us that we had a lot more capacity if we wanted to get from that well over and above the 3,000 gallons per minute. So I think the numbers show that we're successful as well. Now, while numbers and data are important when determining and evaluating success, I believe that the opinions of our end users or customers of the engineering department are important as well. So with that in mind, I solicited some testimonials from our water production department, our customer, just to get what their take was on whether or not we were successful or not. I first talked to Mike Adams, who's the water production supervisor of operations. Mike was very brief and to the point when I asked him if we were successful in rehabilitating well 2 this past spring. And he said, I would say the rehabilitation effort at well 2 was pretty successful. I was looking for a little bit more than that, so I went to another one of the supervisors at water production. So I approached Josh Russell, who's the water production supervisor of operators. And Josh was even a little more matter of fact than Mike was. Josh said, and I quote, "Shoot, that's a lot of water coming from that well." And he was referring to 3,000 gallons per minute. So between the videos and the numbers that we looked at, the data, and some testimonials, I think we could come to the conclusion that we were successful in our rehabilitation efforts. So what did we accomplish today? Well, I believe that in the short time we spent on this topic today, that you have gained a deeper understanding of the important role that our well systems play in our ability to provide raw water supply to our water treatment plants. I think we also have a better understanding of the numerous benefits of improved water quality of the raw water that has undergone riverbank filtration. And in addition to that, I think we've increased our vocabulary as well. In addition to the word riverbank filtration, we've added some other new words to our vocabulary, such as alluvial aquifer, alluvial groundwater, and radial collector well. I also believe that you now recognize how important it is to complete regular maintenance and rehabilitation of the wells. That's about every 3 to 5 years. And how critical these wells are to providing us with flexibility and reliability with our raw water sources of supply. And then finally, I trust that the things that we've discussed today will help our board members be better informed when they're asked to award contracts each year for maintenance of the wells in our raw water collection system. It's been a pleasure and a privilege for me to have this opportunity to speak with you today and to help you become better informed regarding the importance of our well fields and their maintenance. Thank you, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to tackle them.
First, I have to say that I incredibly appreciate your presentations and walking us through from the very basic level of, of what these systems do, how they do it, and making sure that we are, we understand what all staff is sharing with us whenever these types of projects come to our attention, come before us as a board. So I truly appreciate, your presentation. Believe it was last month or the month before on the floor treatment plant and what we did there, and then this one as well. Remind me, I believe you said this at the beginning, how many wells do we have? Radio collector wells?
We have 6 at Maffett Reservoir well field that serve the McMullen water treatment plant. And we have 2 at Sailorville that serve the Sailorville water treatment plant. So a total of 8.
And are they each receiving individual maintenance on a 3-year rotation, or is it case by case, or how does that happen again?
Our water production folks provide some input. Sometimes they feel that there might be a well that could do better in terms of yield, and they might want to have that one be moved up in the queue a little earlier than maybe some of the others. We try to hit all of each one in about 5 years.
Okay, great, thank you.
Vern, I had a question. I know when you show the video, you can hear they're underwater. It's like a diver or somebody equipped with underwater equipment. How deep of water are they standing in when they're conducting that work, and how cold might the water be?
Well, it depends on, of course, the time of year. Wintertime, you're going to get something in probably the mid to upper 30s. Summertime, maybe more in the mid 50s, perhaps. As far as depth goes, they're pumping water out of that well while they're doing the video. So They're probably maybe 10 to 15 feet of water, maybe.
Okay.
And Vern, the work that we did at Saylorville this year was the first half of an ongoing contract. Is that correct?
Yes, that we've got 2 wells that we're going to do under that 2021 well rehabilitation, and well 2 at Saylorville was the first one. We finished that and put it back in service in spring, and our contractor's coming back in the fall to do the second well.
This is Diane. My question goes to us, and I don't know if this is you or Ted, as we look at expanding capacity at Saylorville, are we looking at more of these radial wells? And help me, how many more are we looking at?
The recommendation from HDR included 4 additional radial collector wells at Saylorville to support that 10 MGD expansion. So there would be a total of 6 radial collector wells for the 20 MGD Saylorville plant once it's expanded.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Vern today?
I don't have any other questions. Anybody else?
I have one more question, and that is, I know we have our gallery system that we use at our Fluor plant. This system that's used at Saylorville and Maffett, is it a commonly used system
Vern, you want to
throughout the country?
Yeah, I can take that. Radial collector wells are, it's a technology that's been around for 40 to 50 years. And there's quite a few. In fact, there's several in Iowa already. We as Des Moines Waterworks have the most, of course, because of the size of our utility. But there's radial collector wells in Cedar Rapids. There's radial collector wells in Sioux Falls, Sioux City as well. Several in Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Kentucky. So they're fairly prevalent.
And Vern, I would hazard a guess that radial collector wells are now much more common than the type of gallery system we have here at Fluor Drive. Is that true?
That would be my opinion, yes.
The gallery system provides a similar type of water, the alluvial groundwater, probably a similar quality, but radial collector wells take advantage of more contemporary construction practices to collect that water more cost effectively from a construction perspective. Do you agree with that, Vern?
I would agree with that.
Vern has really become the expert at Des Moines Waterworks on these radial collector wells. He's been involved in all of the construction programs, both the Maffett well field for the McMullen plant and at Saylorville. And now has kind of led all of our rehab work. So he's the expert here on that technology, to be sure. So any other questions for the expert today?
Not at this time, but I do appreciate your presentations. I guess with that, Ted, we'll turn to you for any manager CEO comments.
You know, Andrea, I would share a couple of comments on demand and water quality, given the very hot, dry conditions that we're experiencing here in the metro. Not surprisingly, we're seeing high demand. Yesterday, we produced our customer demand yesterday was 86.3 million gallons. We're probably looking at something similar today, maybe a little lower than yesterday, but with the temperature forecast to be near 100 tomorrow, we're expecting tomorrow to be another big demand day. River levels are going down The flow in the Raccoon River now is about 200 CFS. There's, a foot or so of water in the river, but we aren't having any problems. We haven't yet got to the point where we can put our flashboards up. So there's still enough water in the river for us to take water into the intake without having to put the flashboards up. It's likely that within the next week, or certainly within the next 2 weeks, we will be looking at putting the flashboards up on the Raccoon River for the 3rd year in a row to ensure that we can bring water into the Raccoon River intake here in Waterworks Park. Water quality in the Raccoon remains acceptable, I would say. Nitrate concentrations are low. We aren't seeing significant algae or microcystin in the Raccoon River. In the Des Moines River, there's good flow, but we are starting to see microcystin concentrations above the EPA drinking water health advisory level in the Des Moines River on a fairly regular basis. Not significantly above, but just above. I think at current concentrations, we would certainly be able to handle that water. The system is holding up very well at this 80+ million gallon per day level of demand, but we are watching pretty closely. Our peak demand, customer demand historically was 96 million gallons on a day in 2012. So it's been 10 years ago since we hit our peak. And it's been rare since then for us to produce, or for customer demand to be over 90 million gallons in a day. But there's certainly potential for us to reach that here this week or next. So hats off to the folks in water production who are keeping everything running and keeping the metro supplied with water. We are not anticipating having to do any sort of conservation request unless something changes or something goes wrong. But we are certainly keeping an eye on it. We will likely take advantage of the flashboards being raised to make the community aware of the conditions in terms of low river levels and high demand and pending drought. Just again, to reinforce our lawn watering schedule and ask people to be sure they're following that schedule to help spread the demand over the week and help ensure that everybody has the water they need. But so far so good. And Andrea, I think that's it for me today.
Is that schedule posted on our website?
It is. I know, I see Laura is on. Laura, I don't know if it's one of the rotating features or if it's readily available on the website. I know it has been historically. I know it's out there, but can you give us details on that?
Yeah, let me double check to make sure it's there. It should be there. If not, we'll get it posted. I know yesterday was Monday and we did a no Monday quick social media post, no watering on Monday. Quickly, Melissa did that, but we'll get it posted on our website if it's not out there.
It's there somewhere, but it would be nice if it was, now that we're into this hot, dry period, if it was in one of the rotating features close to the front or on the front page there.
Yep.
Great, thank you. I don't have any other questions for you. Diane, do you have any other questions or anybody else?
No, I don't. I also really appreciated the presentation from Vern. It was very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess with that, we're looking at any public comments. I don't know if I see any public on, I don't believe I see any public on the call, but Michelle, can you confirm?
I can confirm there are no public folks in person or on the call.
Great. Well, if nobody else has anything, I will call an end to our committee meeting today. Thank you all for your information and input.
Very good. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.